So as hard as it was to share my story, I hope that, you know, it helps somebody. But I know that you've struggled with depression and anxiety, or was it just anxiety for you?
I was both. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about it?
Sure. When I was younger, I think it started when I was 9 years old. It was a little bit after my brother was born. That's when I realized that I wasn't really a happy little girl. And over time, I was feeling a lot of doubt. I was feeling a lot of disturbing things in my thoughts. And I struggled with depression at when I was a teenager, I think mostly in my teenage years, to the point where I actually did try to commit suicide. I wasn't expecting this.
I told you. Hold my hand.
My depression got worse at 15. I moved to a new town at 13 years old, so I really had it was new for me, and I was a little bit bullied too because I was the new girl. And this was like the middle of 8th grade. But I really didn't care too much about what people said. And it didn't really affect me because I was able to make friends quickly, and friends that I knew that I could trust. But it was mostly home that I was struggling with. At 15 years old, you could say I was pretty depressed. I would hit myself a lot. I would literally take my head and start hitting my head against the wall. I would take not too sharp of an object, but I remember taking pens and pencils and I would take my wrist and start going in and just start just scraping my skin. I would think a lot about suicide. That was a lot of the thoughts that was going through my head. It's just what's the point of living? What's the point of another day if another day is just going to be like this? It's just going to be a battlefield in my mind. There was a breaking point of my life where I was admitted to the hospital because I really was heavily depressed. It was during Thanksgiving weekend, actually just a few days before Thanksgiving. My mom brought up to my guidance counselor that I was very depressed and that I was feeling all these things. And she asked me, do you have ideas on how you're going to commit suicide? And I said, yes, I already know that I'm just going to hang myself. And she advised my mom that I needed to go and see a psychiatrist. She actually just told my mom to go to the hospital so they can do an evaluation on me. So the whole time I'm thinking, all right, okay, I'm just going to see a psychiatrist. It's not a big deal. I'm just going to go back home. We already went there. And so there's this man, this child psychiatrist, and he sat me down. And I was in this room, and he would show pictures of ink blots, and he would ask, what is this? What do you see? And I remember some of the things I said was pretty crazy. I said that one is an evil clown. That one is dark clouds. I would say these horrific, horrendous imagery. So I guess I convinced him enough that I needed help. I don't know. That I got admitted that same day, and I regretted it. I was so upset at my mom. I was so upset at the whole situation. I did not think I was going to get admitted. I thought that it was the biggest mistake. So I also thought that I was only going to stay there for a couple of days, and instead I stayed there for almost a month. So they did diagnose me as to have depression. And they did try to put me on medication, but my mom did not like that idea. I had like this ongoing conversation with God in my room. And I remember one time I told God, I was like, if you get me out of here as soon as possible, I promise I'm going to work on my depression. I will work on this with you, and that you're going to deliver me from this. So I made that promise with him. And I think like a day later, they have like aides. So an aide like came up to me and she would talk to me, and she's like, if you continue crying, or if you continue like complaining and whining and, doing these things, the more that they're going to keep you. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to smile all the time. But then when it came to family meetings, because they had like this meetings where they sit you down with like 5 doctors, and there's your mom, there's your therapist, there's like these people, like, at that time it was like DIFUS or something like that. And I hated it. I hated it so bad. I would literally show my depressed side. I would not put my best foot forward, and they kept me longer. They kept me longer, and it was just not a good thing. And they were very, very worried for me. So that's why they couldn't discharge me as soon as I hoped.
Yeah.
They also limited my phone calls. I couldn't really talk to people. I couldn't really contact people. Even to my own family, I couldn't really do that. It was really like, and there was so many other teenagers around me that had different problems. I think there was one kid who was schizophrenic. I had another kid who, a girl that I became friends with at that time, who suffered from bipolar. So it was a lot of diagnosis going on. And the whole time I'm like, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. But mind you, we all have the same battles. We all have that battles in our mind. Yeah. I got discharged, and from the discharge, because my mom didn't want to put me on medications, I had to see a therapist. I started seeing a therapist every week, sometimes twice a week. And on top of that, I had a behavioral assistant. So the behavioral assistant is pretty much the therapist's assistant, where she would take me out of the home and we would just talk about some things. And that's when I realized, like, wow, there's actually powerful women out there. There's actually other women that are willing to help you. And on top of that, it's like, when you're going through these things, you think that everybody's perfect, and you think that your whole life is just crumbling down.
And you're the only one.
Yeah, and like you're the only one. But the truth is, sometimes because of your brokenness or because of your depression, you may be somebody's rock and you don't even realize it. And the reason why I knew that was because I think at the end of like my therapy sessions, there was like a ceremony, and my therapist actually gave me an award, and she was like, you are my rock for everything that you have been through, for the progress that I've made, that she was actually inspired by me. So to see something so negative become something so positive,
yeah, your
your life really does make an impact.
Right.
When you don't think that your life matters, your life really matters. I know that your thoughts are clouded, and I know that you may not know that and you may not see that, but you matter to somebody, and you truly do matter to God.
Yeah.
So as I got older, I wasn't really depressed, but I was very anxious. I had very high anxiety, to the point where like it kind of became like OCD, that I needed my house spotless. Like if there was a shoe out and it wasn't in the shoe closet, or if something was not aligned to where it was, I would literally flip out, and it would ruin my whole day. And that was pretty bad because it affected my relationships with my family, and it affected my relationship with my boyfriend. And I think it was about 3 years ago that I said to my boyfriend that I think I need to start seeing a psychologist again or seeing a therapist again, because my anxiety was so bad. I was even like considering like maybe I should be on medication. Like this isn't normal. Like everything became such a big deal. I felt like there was just like this feeling of being overwhelmed for nothing. I felt like everything had to be perfect. I had to like strive for perfection, when in reality you can't strive for perfection.
Right.
So going through that, and he actually talked me out of it. I'm like, you don't need that, you know, that's crazy. Like you don't need to be on medications. You don't need any of that. But my anxiety was very bad that it would just take over my mood. And honestly, I was like content, like because of my anxiety, I guess, because I didn't know what the future holds. And if I took a risk, I didn't want to know what the outcome of that risk would be, either if it's good or bad. So I wouldn't take risks. So I would just live in a bubble.
Yeah.
Live in a bubble.
Played it safe.
Yeah, I played it safe, live in a bubble, but I wasn't happy. Like made me more anxious. And then I just started going to church, and I started speaking more and more to God and talking to him and just laying everything down and surrendering. And at that time, I thought I surrendered it all, but there's really a whole tons of layers of surrender when it comes to our relationship with God. And depression isn't easy. Anxiety is not easy. It doesn't only affect you, but it affects the people around you.
Definitely.
And sometimes I feel like there are people that are like, well, snap out of it, you know, like you can get over it. You can't. Like when you're in that deep, dark place of your mind, it is so hard to get out of it. It took me years and years and years to get out of that. You are worth it. You are loved. You are wanted. You are desired. You are perfect, and you are beautiful just the way you are. Taking your life is not the answer. While I know it may sound reasonable, and to your logic it may sound, well, that's like the perfect solution. I don't have to deal with it anymore. But in truth, reality is that we do need you. Because once you are out of that, you could be the doctor who cures cancer. You could be the person who does all the research for cancer. You know, you can be the next Beyonce. Like, you have no idea of your potential and who you were actually created to be. Because you are created to be much more than where and what you are right now. And one thing I know for sure, that even in my weakness, I'm still strong because God is still with us and God is still with me. So you are not alone. There are other people that have suffered or is suffering with this, you know, and God is with you. He is like in your despair, in your brokenness, in your tears, and in your hopelessness. He's actually closer, and he just wants to be there with you. And there's this, you know, unspeakable peace that he wants to just shower upon his children who's going through any type of grief.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, like we said before with the isolation, that's the prime time for the enemy to speak his lies over you. That's the prime time for him to get you to the place where you'll be weak and you will make decisions from a clouded perspective. And so I really do suggest using the Bible literally as a weapon. You know, starting a little notebook and writing down the verses that inspire you or that motivate you, the verses that comfort you, the verses that, or even the stories of the figures in the Bible who have gone or who went through similar things. People like David, who struggled with the weight of his sin, and the guilt that he carried, and the repercussions of those actions. People like Job, who suffered great loss, and suffered losing his entire family, all his wealth and everything, and wondering why the Lord would forsake him, and never losing hope though, and never losing faith. And then there's Elijah,
Yes.
And Jesus.
Yes. In the Bible, it doesn't specifically state that they were depressed, but they spoke a lot about like devastation. They used words such as
Loss of hope.
Yes, grief,
Weary, fear, afraid,
despair.
Yeah. And so, obviously we're smart enough to be able to understand that what we feel the symptoms of depression or anxiety to be are exactly what the words that they use to describe how they felt at that given point in their life. When I think of the similarities between Jesus's walk and, our reality, even to the fact that Jesus dealt with betrayal and Jesus dealt with lack of support. And while he had his disciples who supported him and were there for him, even they doubted. And even they betrayed him. With Judas, for example, like my friend who I thought was my friend, who said these super negative things that put me down, Jesus knows what that felt like. And so to know that my Lord and Savior knows what I'm going through and experienced it, doesn't make me happy, because I wouldn't want that for anybody, but it just makes me feel like I'm not alone. It makes me feel like I'm praying to the right person, that I'm seeking support from someone who's been there and done that. How many times on our daily lives you will take advice from someone if you know that they went through the same thing you're going through. You wouldn't take advice from someone who hasn't ever experienced it, right? So the same thing goes for us in Jesus. He's experienced all of these things that we're going through already, so he gets it. And and by getting it, then he can give the proper advice, the proper healing. He can minister to you.
And it's okay to lay down your problems and speak to God about it. And it's okay for you to even ask him, like, God, can you take this away? Is there another way? Because Jesus did that too. when he knew that his hour was to come, he literally prayed, and he was like sweating blood.
Yeah, he was sweating blood, and he said, Lord, God, if this, or Father, I think
it was
said,
Father,
that's his father. That's his daddy. In the Bible, we get an amazing look into how human Jesus really was in his prayer to God, where he says, this is Mark 14, verse 36. He said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but you will. So in the Bible, we get an amazingly close look at how human Jesus actually was when it was time for him to die. And I just wanted to share Mark 14, verses 34 through 36 from the Passion Version, because we feel like it really paints a picture that we can actually use in our day-to-day. It says, and he said to them, my heart is overwhelmed with anguish and crushed with grief. It feels as though I'm dying. Stay here and keep watch with me. He walked a short distance away, and being overcome with grief, he threw himself face down on the ground. He prayed that if it were possible, he would not have to experience this hour of suffering. He prayed, Abba, my Father, all things are possible for you. Please don't allow me to drink this cup of suffering. Yet what I want is not important, for I only desire to fulfill your plan for me. How human is he? How many times, I know for me, I can think of how many times I prayed to God, like, God, just take it away.
Yeah.
Like, just take this away. You can do it. I know you can. And yet, God allowed Jesus to go through what needed to happen. There would be no resurrection. There would be no salvation if Jesus didn't die on the cross. So his suffering had to happen. And I'm not saying that your suffering has to happen. I'm not addressing your suffering at all. I'm saying Jesus had to suffer so that we can have salvation,
Yeah.
and God was still with him, and that did not mean that God did not love him, or that God was not listening, or that God was not there. So we have to stop and think, like, is my suffering for a reason?
Right.
But not only that, that if Jesus suffered and was still kept by God, so are we able to be kept by God and actually kept.
Yes. And that in your brokenheartedness, that God is still with you. Even if you're crushed in spirit, it says in Psalms 34:18 that he's with you. He is with you in your moments of despair. He's with you in your moments of hardships, and that he will never forsake you or he will never leave you.
If you allow him, God will step in and literally hold a mirror to your face and show you who you are to him, and reveal your identity to yourself.
Yeah.
And then you can love yourself, and then you can love your neighbor.
Yeah.
I know for me, it literally took God shining a mirror to myself. So I want to do this little activity that we did at Resting Place that I think will help. And I know that God will minister to you just how he ministered to us through it. So you have to get into a calm, quiet area. You can play your worship music. You can say a short prayer first if you'd like to. Whatever it takes for you to get in that zone. And then ask God, God, how do you see me? How do you view me? What do you say about me?
Yeah.
And then just be still. And let God reveal who you are to him.
So we kind of already know who you are without even seeing you face to face.
Yes.
So we're going to start this game off a little bit.
Okay.
So you are courageous.
You are beautiful.
You are a conqueror.
You are victorious.
You are royalty.
Your price is far beyond rubies.
You are a son or a daughter.
You are loved.
You are wanted.
You are cared for.
You are healed.
You are restored.
You are redeemed.
You are clean as white snow.
Yes. And you are ultimately a friend of Jesus. You are worthy.
You are chosen.
And you are not forsaken.
You are heard.
You are welcomed.
You're invited.
There's just so many encouraging words about you that you haven't even seen yet. And we are hoping and we are praying that God unveils your eyes for you to see just the amazing sons and daughters that you all are. And that once you start seeing that, I promise you, your life will never ever be the same. And your heart will just, I don't know, it's like your heart will just melt. Like, it's so powerful of how when God starts planting seeds and when he starts showing you, showing you like, I love you so much, and hit this burning desire in his heart, that love that he has for each and every one of you. It's like a love that's not even like human.
No, you can't describe it.
No.
And I mean, I don't think we've even experienced a tenth of what that love really feels like. I don't think our minds and our bodies can actually take it. So he has to give it to us in small doses.
Yeah.
But the biggest takeaway is that you literally can have a relationship with God, and he will literally reveal himself.
Yeah.
I said literally a lot of times there, but it's okay. God will show you who he is through relationship. Just like this might be a dumb example, but for example, when you first start dating someone, if they're closed off,
right,
do you open yourself up to them?
No.
If you feel like you're closed off, they're not going to open up to you either. Well, a relationship with God is similar. God is always there, and he's always waiting for you, but he doesn't force himself on you. And if you are not engaging him, if you are not making time for him, if you're not making space for him in your life, then he will not reveal that much of himself to to you.
Yeah.
You know, he will only reveal ever so lightly.
Yeah.
Or ever so little of himself. How much more can he show you when you actually give him time, when you actually share yourself with him and open up, just like when you're dating? It's the same exact thing.
So in order for you to actually invite him in is don't hide your pain. Don't hide your struggle. Don't hide yourself from him.
Yeah.
You know, and that kind of what happened.
Open.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened with Adam and Eve. Once they ate the fruit, you know, they started hiding from God.
Yeah, they were ashamed.
Yeah, God doesn't want that. He wants to just take off that shame, and he doesn't want you hiding.
No. You are never too far gone for God. God will leave the 99 for the one.
Yeah.
And the beauty of God is that he doesn't say, oh, hey, come here.
Yeah.
I've got you. Come, just come. No. He comes to you.
Yeah.
And he's where you are. He meets you where you are. All you have to do is turn around and face him.
Yeah.
And in turning around and facing him, you're turning away from that old life. You're turning away from that sin. And you're turning towards your one true salvation.
Yes.
And that is the biggest and most wonderful yes that you will ever say. And it will be the most transformational thing you could ever do in your entire life. So we hope that sharing our stories will help you to know that you're not alone in what you're going through. Not only have we gone through it, but so did so many figures in the Bible, like David, Elijah, Job, and even Jesus.
So make sure you follow us on Instagram and DM us. We'd love to pray for you.
Click on that beautiful magical red button to subscribe to our channel and hit the little bell next to it. That'll make sure that you're notified every time we post. See you next